In the middle of a dazzling Las Vegas concert, where the spotlight often shines only on the performer, there was one moment that would change the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, forever. It was August 12th, 1976. Elvis was in the midst of his second show at the International Hotel. The air was thick with anticipation, the energy was electric, and 15,000 fans had gathered to witness yet another legendary performance. Yet, amidst the flashing lights, the echoing applause, and the music that had been the soundtrack to millions of lives, a single whisper stopped the show cold. This was no ordinary concert. Elvis, the king, was at his peak, performing his timeless hits with the familiar flair and energy that had made him a global icon. Fans screamed, cheered, and shouted their love for him. But tonight, something far more meaningful was about to unfold. Among the sea of adoring faces, there was one in particular that caught Elvis's attention. A young woman sitting in the third row, tears streaming down her face. But not in the way Elvis was accustomed to. This wasn't the typical fan crying because they were in the presence of their idol. No, this was different. It was a raw, heart-wrenching kind of emotion, one that made Elvis pause in the middle of his performance. And in that brief moment of silence, the world around them fell away, leaving just a powerful connection between Elvis and a young woman named Jenny Martinez. What she would whisper in his ear that night would not only stop a concert, it would reshape Elvis Presley, the performer, and perhaps even the man himself. But how does a simple whisper in the middle of a concert redefine a legend's purpose? How can a single moment of vulnerability shatter the walls between performer and audience, allowing them to connect in a way that transcends music? Let's step into this poignant chapter of Elvis's life and understand how an intimate exchange between him and a grieving fan revealed the true healing power of music. Elvis Presley, the undisputed king of rock and roll, had been on top of the world for over 2 decades. His name was synonymous with fame, fortune, and adoration from millions of fans. Yet, behind the glittering facade of his larger-than-life persona, there was a man who often found himself wrestling with a deep sense of isolation. On stage, Elvis was the epitome of confidence, his every move electrifying the crowd. But when the lights dimmed and the curtains fell, the loneliness crept in. The public saw the Elvis who was adored and idolized, the swaggering, charismatic performer who could fill an arena with his presence and charm. However, in the quiet moments of his life, there was a man who felt the weight of his fame more than most could ever imagine. Fame, after all, is a double-edged sword. While it brought him adulation and riches, it also thrust him into a world where his every move was scrutinized. The people closest to him often spoke of his deep struggles with his identity outside the stage. Who was Elvis when the music stopped? On the surface, his life seemed perfect, everything he could have ever dreamed of. But the reality was far more complicated. The king of rock and roll had become a prisoner of his own success. He felt the pull of his public persona, always being on, unable to let his guard down. He had the world at his feet, but in his heart, something was missing. It was a void that no number of performances or applause could fill. In that arena in Las Vegas, as he basked in the thunderous applause following his rendition of Hound Dog, Elvis was, in that moment, a man caught between his duty to entertain and his deeper need for connection. The sheer volume of love and admiration that was poured on him by his fans was, paradoxically, a constant reminder of how isolated he truly felt. His body was present, but his mind was elsewhere, lost in a sea of doubt and confusion. Had he become just a symbol, a larger-than-life figure, whose music meant something profound to the world, yet left him struggling to find his own peace? It was in this state of vulnerability, amid the glamour of the concert stage, that he noticed Jenny Martinez. She was different from the others. Her tears were not those of joy or excitement. Elvis, with his finely tuned ability to read the crowd, could sense that something deeper was at play. What was this feeling that stirred within him? Why did this girl sitting so far away evoke such a powerful reaction? As the music played on, Elvis's focus shifted entirely. He no longer saw a fan or an audience member. He saw a person in pain, the connection he had longed for, the human interaction that transcended the superficial, was suddenly within his reach. The spotlight no longer felt like a stage light. It felt like the light of truth, shining on a moment that would forever alter the course of his life. The moment Elvis spoke into the microphone, halting the performance, the atmosphere in the arena shifted. The air, once thick with excitement and energy, became dense with anticipation. The crowd, sensing that something profound was unfolding, fell silent, awaiting what would happen next. Elvis had seen countless faces in the crowd, but this time something inside him urged him to focus on the young woman with tears streaming down her face. It was as though her grief had reached out to him, tugging at something deep within his soul. "Hold on a second, folks." Elvis Sepp's voice cut through the tension, his eyes still locked on the girl. He stepped to the edge of the stage, his gaze never wavering. "I see someone out there who looks like she might need a friend tonight." The audience shifted, their attention turning toward Jenny. Her eyes widened, the spotlight now directly on her, and she looked around as if she might be mistaken for someone else. But there was no mistaking it. The king had singled her out. The crowd started murmuring. Their curiosity piqued. They could sense that this wasn't just another fan interaction. This was something deeper. "You, Sit-all have to come up here," Elvis continued, his tone soft yet insistent. "You, darling, the pretty lady in the blue dress. What's your name?" Jenny Sepp's voice trembled as she answered, barely audible above the noise of the crowd. "Jenny, that's a beautiful name," Elvis said, his voice now filled with genuine concern. His smile had softened, and he walked over to extend a hand, offering her a way out of the overwhelming spotlight. "I saw you crying down there. Are you okay, sweetheart?" Jenny nodded, but her tears continued to fall. There was an unmistakable sadness in her eyes, something far more profound than just the excitement of meeting her idol. Elvis, with his trademark charisma and kindness, gently reassured her. "Don't be nervous, honey. These folks are friendly. Tell them where you're from." Jenny, still in shock, managed to choke out her answer. "San Antonio." Elvis said, "San Antonio? I love Texas. Beautiful state, beautiful people. Now, Jenny, I saw you crying. Want to tell me what's wrong?" He was inviting her, in the most genuine way possible, to share her truth. At this moment, everyone expected Jenny to say something typical, the kind of things fans often say when meeting their hero. But what she whispered to him next was something no one could have predicted. She looked up at him, her voice so soft it barely reached his ears. "My little brother Miguel died last month. He was 8 years old. He had cancer. The last song we played for him before he died was 'Love Me Tender.' You helped him not be scared." The words hit Elvis like a freight train. The world around him seemed to freeze. His expression shifted from one of light-hearted humor to one of raw, unfiltered emotion. The smile that had been on his face moments earlier disappeared in an instant. His heart sank, and for the briefest of seconds he felt as if the weight of the world had fallen onto his shoulders. His gaze softened, but it was a gaze filled with grief, empathy, and understanding. "What did you say, darling?" Elvis asked, his voice now trembling. He leaned in closer, straining to hear the quiet words Jenny had spoken. He knew he had to understand her pain. Jenny, now realizing the microphone had picked up her words, cried harder. The crowd, sensing the change in the tone of the conversation, began to quiet down. Elvis stood still, processing what Jenny had shared with him. The king of rock and roll, a man who had sung to presidents and packed stadiums, was now face to face with the rawest form of human emotion, grief. The realization that his music had been part of the comfort Jenny's brother Miguel had found in his final days settled heavily in his heart. He didn't need to say much. His silence spoke volumes, but when he did speak, his voice was thick with emotion. "Your little brother, what was his name?" "Miguel," Jenny whispered. "He was the sweetest little boy. He wanted to be a singer like you." Elvis closed his eyes for a brief moment, And in that silence he felt a connection that he hadn't experienced in years. He wasn't just Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, the performer. In that moment he was simply a man who understood pain and was trying, with all his heart, to offer comfort. And as he looked back at Jenny, the tears in her eyes became a mirror for his own. He realized that sometimes the most important thing wasn't just the music he created, but the way that music made others feel, how it could heal, comfort, and provide peace in moments of unimaginable loss. The air in the arena was thick with emotion. Elvis, a man known for his rock and roll bravado, had never been this vulnerable in front of a crowd. The king of rock and roll, whose performances had earned him countless standing ovations, was now standing on stage, overcome with emotion, holding back tears for a little boy he had never met. Elvis tried to steady himself, but the weight of Jenny's words and the story of Miguel's passing seemed to anchor him to the moment. He had always prided himself on maintaining control during his performances. No matter the pressure, no matter the adoration, Elvis had learned to mask his own vulnerabilities. But now, in front of 15,000 people, he felt himself unravel. And then, in that instant, something changed. It wasn't just the sadness that enveloped him. It was the realization that the music he had spent his life creating had a deeper, more profound purpose than he had ever imagined. He was more than just a performer, more than a star who could dazzle a crowd. In that moment, Elvis realized that the true power of his music lay in its ability to connect, to heal, and to bring comfort when it was needed most. "Your little brother," Elvis said softly, his voice now thick with emotion. "Miguel, that sip's a beautiful name. I bet he was a beautiful little boy." Jenny, her tears still flowing freely, nodded, her voice quivering as she spoke of Miguel Sip's love for music. "He used to sing 'De Love Me Tender Sip' to our baby sister when she couldn't set sleep. Even when he was so sick, he would still sing that song." The pain in her voice, the tenderness with which she spoke of her brother, pierced through the very fabric of Elvis's being. The vulnerability in her words made him realize that music, for all its grandeur and fame, was truly a force of empathy, a bridge between souls, a comfort for those in need. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis said, his voice faltering but filled with warmth, "I want you to meet Jenny Martinez from San Antonio. She just told me about her little brother Miguel who passed away last month. He was 8 years old, and he loved music. His favorite song was 'Love Me Tender,' and Jenny tells me that it brought him comfort in his final days." The audience, which had been applauding just moments before, now stood in stunned silence. There was no cheering, no whistling. It was as if the entire arena had collectively exhaled, their hearts heavy with the weight of Jenny's loss and the tenderness that hung in the air. Elvis turned back to Jenny, still holding her close, and spoke with a sincerity that would forever echo in the memories of those who witnessed it. "I can think of a greater honor than knowing that something I recorded helped a little boy not be afraid." And with those words, Elvis Presley made a decision. The performer in him stepped aside, and the man, the human being, the healer, took center stage. He didn't just want to sing a song for Miguel. He wanted to sing it with the kind of tenderness and empathy that could only come from truly understanding the power of music to heal, to offer solace, and to be a lifeline when it was needed most. "Jenny," Elvis said, his voice gentle and comforting, "I want to sing that song right now, and I want you to stay up here with me. Can you do that?" Jenny, overwhelmed by the moment, nodded. She had been invited into Elvis's world, but now it felt as though he had stepped into hers, a world where music was no longer a performance, but a language of connection, love, and loss. As Elvis sat down at the piano, his hands trembling slightly, he began to play. "Love Me Tender" filled the air, but it was unlike any performance he had ever given. His voice, usually bold and commanding, now carried a vulnerability that softened every note. Jenny too began to sing softly, her voice trembling at first but then growing stronger as she sang alongside him. The audience could feel the magic of the moment, the raw human connection that transcended the art of music itself. As Elvis sang, he wasn't just performing for an audience. He was honoring the memory of a little boy named Miguel, and he was sharing in the grief and healing that Jenny had brought to the stage. The song became a prayer, a tribute, and a testament to the power of human connection. And as their voices intertwined, the audience understood this wasn't just a performance. This was a shared moment of healing, of remembrance, and of love. When the song ended, the silence in the arena was deafening. It wasn't just the usual applause for an amazing performance. It was a standing ovation for the human connection that had been forged on that stage. It was a standing ovation for Jenny, for Miguel, and for Elvis's vulnerability. The aftermath of that night in Las Vegas marked a turning point for Elvis Presley. In the hours following the concert, as he sat alone in his dressing room, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted within him. For years he had been a symbol of escapism, a source of joy and excitement for millions. His music had filled the airwaves, and his performances had transported people into a world of electrifying entertainment. But in that moment on stage, when he connected with Jenny and heard her story about Miguel, the true purpose of his music became clear. Elvis had always been aware of the power of music to inspire and entertain, but he had never fully grasped its capacity to heal. That night, he learned that music could be a balm for the soul, a lifeline in moments of darkness. Jenny's words, her sorrow, and her courage had opened his eyes to the profound responsibility he carried as an artist. It wasn't just about giving people a good time, it was about offering comfort, healing, and connection when they needed it most. From that night forward, Elvis approached his performances with a renewed sense of purpose. He didn't just perform for applause or fame. He performed for the people who needed his music to get through the hardest moments of their lives. He began to understand that the impact of his songs went beyond the lights of the stage and the glamour of his career. His music had become a part of people's lives in ways he had never fully realized. It had the power to bring people together, to offer them solace, and to remind them that they were not alone in their struggles. In the days following the concert, word of what had transpired between Elvis and Jenny spread quickly. Fans from all over the world shared their own stories of how Elvis's music had helped them through difficult times. His team, his friends, and his colleagues began to notice a change in him, an increased sense of empathy and a more introspective approach to his music. Joe Esposito, his road manager, later reflected that Elvis had become more aware of the responsibility that came with his fame. He realized that for many people his music wasn't just entertainment, it was a lifeline, Esposito said. Elvis also began incorporating a moment of silence for all the children who had passed away into each of his concerts. It became a tribute to the power of music and its ability to transcend grief. This gesture was not just for Miguel, but for every person who had found solace in the healing power of music. Jenny Martinez's life, too, was forever changed by that night. Though she had initially been terrified to attend the concert after losing her little brother, she had realized that her visit to Las Vegas was not just a way to honor Miguel's memory, it was a chance for her to share his story with someone who understood the deep emotional connection that music could create. Jenny later shared in an interview, "I almost didn't go to the show. Music reminded me too much of Miguel, but my mom said he would have wanted me to go. I realized that night that this was Miguel's gift to me. He gave me the chance to share his story with Elvis." Jenny's experience with Elvis sparked a movement of its own. In 1999, she founded the Miguel Martinez Foundation, which provides music therapy for children in hospitals. The foundation's mission was born from the profound impact that Elvis's music had on her family during Miguel's final days. "Miguel taught me that music has healing power," Jenny said at the foundation's launch. "Elvis showed me how to use that power to help others." While Elvis would not live to see the foundation's creation, he passed away less than a year after meeting Jenny. His influence on Jenny's journey was undeniable. The moment that began with vulnerability and grief had come full circle, turning into a legacy of hope, compassion, and the healing power of music. It was a legacy that, like Elvis's music, would continue to touch lives for generations to come. Elvis Presley's performance on that fateful night in August 1976 was far more than just another concert. It became a pivotal moment in his life and career, one that transcended the boundaries of music and entertainment. In that brief, vulnerable exchange with Jenny Martinez, Elvis discovered that music, the very thing that had made him a global icon, had a deeper purpose than he had ever understood. It wasn't just about entertaining, it was about healing, about being there for people when they needed it most. Jenny's story and the memory of her brother Miguel had shown Elvis that music could connect people in ways that words and actions often couldn't. It was a language of empathy and understanding, capable of bringing comfort even in the darkest moments. Through his music, Elvis had unknowingly become a healer, a source of solace for those struggling with loss, pain, and fear. And that realization forever changed the way he viewed his role in the world. But this lesson didn't just affect Elvis, it reached far beyond him, inspiring people like Jenny to create a legacy that would continue to bring comfort to others. The Miguel Martinez Foundation, founded by Jenny, stands as a testament to the power of music to heal, to bridge divides, and to offer hope to those in need. Jenny herself said it best: "Elvis showed me how to use that power to help others." As we reflect on this moment, we are reminded of the timeless truth that music is more than just sound. It is a lifeline. It is a way for us to connect with each other, to share our stories, and to heal together. Elvis's vulnerability on that stage, his willingness to open his heart to a grieving fan, showed us the beauty of human connection and the extraordinary impact of empathy. And as you watch this story, I encourage you to reflect on your own life. Have you ever had a moment when music or art helped you through a difficult time? When was the last time you allowed yourself to truly connect with someone on a deep, emotional level? I invite you to share your story in the comments below. How has music shaped your life? And how have you used it to connect with others? Perhaps there's someone you know who could use a little more comfort right now. Someone who needs to hear that their grief is seen and understood. Elvis's story reminds us all that in the end, it's not about the applause, the fame, or the spotlight. It's about the moments of true human connection. The moments when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to feel, and to share that feeling with others. Music is the bridge that connects us, the balm that soothes our wounds, and the light that guides us through our darkest hours. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful moments happen when we least expect them.